People say live below your means.
Below your means?
And Bassick deals.
That's like Bonds bunting. That's like Brady retiring after college. Or Beyonce quitting after Destiny's Child. That's like flying all the way to the moon without walking around on it. That would be like Enter the Wu-Tang 3 Chambers. Or the perfect triple axel without sticking it. Expand your means.
Hey, well, let me get right into your listener questions today. Dave from Bellingham, Washington asks, Keith, I thought it was good to make a big down payment on a property. That way I'd not only have less debt, but I'd also have the benefit of making smaller mortgage payments over time, and that means that I would pay less in interest over the life of the loan. Can you tell me more about how, like you say, financially free beats debt free? Good question, Dave. Common question. In fact, there was a time in my life where I thought, my gosh, if I could have my home or any property completely paid off, oh, what a feeling. Oh, I'd really have it made. Then I became aware of the opportunity cost. So Dave, let me answer this in a somewhat different perspective than I've answered it before for some of the viewers here. So Dave, if you can borrow at a 6 or 7% mortgage interest rate, which with tax deductions, it might be an effective 5% cost of capital that you're paying on that loan, you need to ask yourself, can you go out and beat that 5% rate on the market today over the long term, that difference, that delta being your profit, being your arbitrage? Yes, you probably can. But the riskiest thing that a lot of people do by making a big down payment up front, yes, their payments are smaller over time, but they're cash poor for quite a while when they do that. So now if the cash is already in the home or the rental property or whatever it might be, now a lot of times that borrower, that homeowner, they worry about, oh, what's going to happen if there's something unexpected? What if you have a big disruption in your life? Now, say, for example, that your day job is 70 to 100% of your income, and now you lose your day job. Now you have a big lump of cash trapped in the home as equity, which earns zero return, and you better believe that as soon as you want to access that equity because you've lost your job, a bank definitely is not going to let you get a new loan when you don't have a job, when you don't have a stable source of income, right? Like they say, a bank only makes you a loan when you really don't need it. Now you're at risk of losing your home. So the best way to keep equity separated from your home is to ensure that less goes in there in the first place with a smaller down payment. In fact, I've shared before elsewhere how I found out a way to make only a 5% down payment on my primary residence, still get a great low mortgage interest rate with conventional financing, and have zero monthly PMI payments. The short story and how I did that is I made a full price offer for the property, and I asked for a seller concession that the seller pay the upfront PMI premium for me, so therefore I didn't have one each month thereafter. That's how I kept equity separated from my home, ensuring it never goes in there in the first place. And the other reality too is that the more you borrow, the more you have the benefit of using other people's money. So really a great question to ask yourself, Dave, is how far could I ever get in my investing career? How big of a real estate portfolio could I ever build if I will only use my own money and deny myself the disciplined use of other people's money? That's a great question to ask yourself. If you've got no debt, you've got no leverage, and if you've got no leverage, you've got no wealth. That's a real paradox to the uninitiated. Remember, in a cash flowing rental property as well, your entire monthly payment is outsourced to a tenant. That's mortgage principal and interest and taxes and insurance and maintenance and repairs and utilities and everything else. So you likely want leverage and cash flow more than you want equity. And as a reminder, just say, for example, back to your own home, if you ever have that paid off and you're mortgage free and you feel like you might think that you won down the road with that arrangement, well, if you ever become mortgage free, you're still not housing payment free. You've only retired the mortgage. Every month, month after month, even with a paid off mortgage, you're still going to have a monthly payment for property tax and insurance and maintenance and repairs and utilities and everything else. Thanks for writing in, Dave. Andrew from New York State had a question. He wrote into our contact page at getricheducation.com/contact. And Andrew, you've been an avid listener for quite a while to the Get Rich Education audio only podcast. I recognized your name when it came in. We saw your full name, first and last name, and you're a veterinarian from New York State. I really appreciate your longtime following. Andrew asks, is it a true statement to think that even in today's higher interest rate environment, that any mortgage rate under the rate of inflation of roughly 8% is therefore a bargain? Andrew goes on to write, today I am not getting great cash flow, only $100 a month or break even when I buy new builds, but I still see the upside in real estate investing due to its inflationary hedge. All right, thanks for that, Andrew. With the first question, is any mortgage rate under the rate of 8% inflation a bargain? Well, no, not actually, but it could be. Now, of course, many think that the real rate of inflation, the true diminished purchasing power of the dollar, is something like 15%, maybe even 20%, but let's just stick with 8% inflation. Therefore, if you get a mortgage rate of 6 or 7%, you are effectively being paid to borrow, yes. And that is because, and you want to listen to this part closely here, with the money that you've borrowed from the bank, over time, you get to repay the bank with dollars that debase on them faster than their interest can accrue on you. That's how it stealthily builds your wealth. And the risk associated with that, Andrew, besides being most attentive to your personal cash flows, is that at some point over time, there is a good chance that the rate of inflation is going to duck back below mortgage interest rates sometime, although that won't happen real soon. We're in this inversion now where the opposite is true and inflation is higher than interest rates. So enjoy it while it lasts. And I would think of your interest rate being lower than inflation is really just a short-term to medium-term tailwind on your investments. Your second question was about how today you're not getting great cash flow when you buy a new build rental property. It might be only $100 positive cash flow or break even, but you still do like investing in real estate for the inflation hedge. I actually think of leveraged fixed interest rate debt, real estate as an inflation profiting vehicle more than an inflation hedging vehicle, but I take your point, Andrew. Yeah, this lower $100 positive cash flow on the purchase of a new build rental property, yeah, that is low, and that's something that we've been having to get more used to in the last year or two here. And there's a chance that that $100 cushion is going to widen now that rents are going up torridly, but there's certainly no guarantee of that. It's like I've explained elsewhere with the housing market dynamic that we've had in the past 2 years. First, we had real estate prices run up, that first wave. Then there's a trough of that wave, and then the rents run up later. So while you're in that trough, that's when cash flow is lowest. Andrew, I can tell that you're a close listener just by the words and the concepts that you're using. I love that. Thank you for your longtime following. The third and final question comes from JW. Hey, go ahead and put a like on this YouTube video if you like that I'm answering your listener questions. And this question came from right here on our YouTube channel, so I don't know where you're from, therefore, JW, but you ask, Keith, what are your views on prepayment penalties on commercial loans? On my current 8-unit apartment I'm pursuing, I'm getting financing offers, and they all have prepayment penalties. Okay, thanks for the question, JW. And you know, I think the reason why this question really appealed to me is that I, as a real estate investor myself, I have owned an 8-unit apartment building that had a prepayment penalty on it. It was a 5-year prepayment penalty. And you typically see these prepayment penalties on commercial loans, which include 5+ unit apartment buildings, even though they're residential, they're commercial loans. But first, let me describe what a prepayment penalty is. And it's funny, I've been at real estate investor meetups in the past where the topic is prepayment penalties, and some people in the crowd are just incredulous. Like, how could these things possibly exist? Is that even ethical? People seem outraged at them.
I'm just the editor starter, but I'm outraged by them. They have them on personal residences here in Germany. What's that all about? What if you have to move?
All a prepayment penalty is a fee that your lender charges you if you pay off all or part of your mortgage early. By the way, if you have a prepayment penalty, that's something that you would have agreed to at the time you buy the property, at the closing table. So it shouldn't be any surprise. That's going to be clearly disclosed to you. Oftentimes your escrow officer there is even going to explain that part to you so that you're aware of that prepayment penalty. So yeah, in my experience, you don't often see them on 1 to 4 unit properties, but let's talk about how you navigate a prepayment penalty. First of all, the way that it often works is your penalty is less severe the longer the duration of the loan goes. So if you try to make an early payoff or you try to pay it down, therefore, if you only have your loan for 2 years, you'd pay a higher prepayment penalty than you would if you tried to pay it off after 4 years, and then at 5 years, the prepayment penalty sunsets. Now, PPPs, they can be a really poor choice if, for example, say you buy an apartment building and you want to do a 2-year rehab on it, and then after 2 years, you want to do a cash out refinance. Well, then you'd have this penalty exacted on you. So therefore, that would be a poor choice to have a prepayment penalty for what you plan to use as what they would call a value add apartment building. So I've had these 5-year prepayment penalties on various apartment buildings, and it's never been a problem for me because I do these for long-term buy and holds where I plan to hold that property for more than 5 years. Therefore, I've never had to pay any penalty. I also don't make extra principal payments on a loan. That's almost never a good idea. So that's just another reason why I've never had to pay a prepayment penalty in my entire life. So now that you know about some cases when you do and when you don't want to have a PPP on a property, let's talk about why these things exist in the first place. Lenders charge PPPs to provide a borrower a disincentive for paying off your loan early. And that's because lenders have to commit a considerable amount of time up front to even evaluate you as a borrower and to underwrite your loans. They want to get some recompense with interest payments over a few years until that fades off into nothingness. That's how PPPs work. Thank you for the question, JW. Hey, what's your question? Leave a comment and I will go ahead and try to respond to your question or comment. I'm Keith Weinhold. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.